Well, hi again, YouTube. It's Rob Ryder, and today I'd like to talk to Commander Trump. Commander Trump, I captured the underground Pentagon. You should give me an order. I did, sir, in 1985. Me and two other guys captured the underground Pentagon, which I'll be happy to explain in more detail at the end. But my main reason for saying it in the first place was to hopefully get somebody to watch the video who could get a hold of Commander Trump and tell him that his biggest asset is sitting on the sidelines because he's not using enlistees the way that he could. Because enlistees have in our oath that we will obey the orders of the President of the United States. And there isn't any other federal government officer of any kind that has that in their oath. It's only enlistees, sir. So if you give me an order, sir, all doors will open. And I have some ideas what to use that for. Well, who am I? Well, I'm Enlistee Robert Allen, soldier for life. DOD ID number 12112800006. And just here recently, sir, you wrote me, Dear Soldier for Life Enlistee, from the White House on June 13th, 2025. Signed by Donald John Trump, because they say Donald John Trump doesn't use an auto pen. And there's his signature. So thank you, sir. Why did I get that? Well, because I write to the White House quite often telling you all the shit that's going on that's wrong because you're getting really bad advice from Esquires. Esquires who impersonate attorneys, judges, justices, and other public officers because they never use their full legal name. And so it can't be legal. Right? In fact, here just recently, we started to actually, the Real ID Act has been the Real ID Act for 20-some years, but now we're going to enforce it, they say. Well, it says in the Real ID Act that you have to use your full legal name, which means an individual's first name, middle names, last name, or surname without use of initials or nicknames. And I'll show you shortly that everybody uses, middle initial names. So it can't be legal, sir, because if you're going to take me to court in something besides my full legal name, you just made me a John Doe, and I'm not paying for John Doe's debt. So, and the person that's going to charge you is using a middle initial name. And the person that's going to decide the case is using the middle initial name. And the clerk that's keeping all the records is using the middle initial name. And it just goes on and on and on and on. And we got to put an end to that stuff, sir, because that, I say, is a fraud against the United States because it says to use your full legal name. And I think that's how you could use us enlistees, right? We can just be checking IDs. We could be checking, actually what we need to be checking, sir, is we need to be checking the paperwork put in by attorneys into court to make sure they use their full legal name. And to make sure that whatever comes out of that judge's pie hole is under his full legal name. And then the clerk has attested it and put the court seal on. All these things that are supposed to happen that aren't happening, that I can show you now where it says it has to happen in the law. So let's get after it. Hang on just a second. So first, let me show you the problem, and then I'll propose a solution. So here's the problem, sir. This is Title 28 of the United States Code, supposed to be for the judiciary, where it talks in 1691, subsection 1691, seal and test of process. All writs and process issued from a court of the United States shall be under the seal of court and signed by the clerk thereof. Don't seem like there's any room for anything other than a seal of the court and the signature of the clerk to prove that it's a process from a court of the United States. Well, isn't that what a district court's supposed to be? Or the appeals court? Well, the Supreme Court, aren't those all courts of the United States? None of them use a seal, or none of them have the clerk sign. So hold that thought for a second, and then we're going to look really quick in Federal Rules of Civil Procedure, Rule 4, where it talks about summons. You've been summoned a few times, sir. This is what it says about summons. Contents, right? Summons must have to have all these things and be signed by the clerk and bear the court seal. Well, let's go look at a couple and see if that's what they do. Hey, here's a summons for Donald J. Trump. Well, there you go. They're using the middle initial name, so actually they're talking to a John Doe. And this is in the docket of the court, so this is what's been filed, and there's no signature of the clerk, and there's no court seal. And then as it turns out, there's a proof of service attached. It hasn't been filled out either. Right? And so this is what they use to get you to go to court. They say that this is legal. And it isn't. None of this is by the Title 28 United States Code. Or, because it would be a process of the court, so I guess it would be. But in Rule 4 of the civil procedures for summons, it was done wrong. The real problem is that Pam Bondi got one too. She's an Esquire. Well, how come she doesn't know this? Why is a 67-year-old E6 got to tell you? Hey, sir, they ain't got no fucking signature, sir. Ain't got no seal. And no proof of service, sir. How hard is that? So obviously, somebody doesn't want you to know these things. So how we get you to know so you can do something about it, I'm not quite sure. That's the reason for the video. Maybe somebody, an in-betweener, can help us out. And here's a court case that you're involved in. Donald J. Trump, again, I mean, a fiction is standing in for the President of the United States with an order from a district court judge. What district is this? United States District Court for the District of Columbia. James E. Boasberg. Well, jeepers. We've already know. Well, you can't use the middle initial. That's incorrect. There's no seal on it from the court. 28 U.S.C. 1691. That's wrong. And there's no signature of the clerk. Wrong, 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 sir. And yet, this is what they were tying up all of your plans with. Who was Esquires were, sir. People who impersonate being attorneys, judges, justices, and public officers. They're all Esquires. And an Esquire, by definition, is an agent of the crown. So their allegiance is to the crown, not to the United States. Well, that goes against my oath, sir. Or how about this one here that Mike Davis posted on X, right from the District of Columbia Court of Appeals, where Jeffrey B. Clark, middle initial, Esquire, they're trying to kick him out of the bar of the D.C. bar. So this is supposed to be an order from the acting chief judge of the District Court of Appeals, which if that's a court of the United States, well, this has to have the seal of the court and the signature of the clerk. And neither of them are there. So guess what? This is not a court of the United States. It's a court of Esquires. Esquire, 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 Esquire. They're all Esquires, sir. All middle initial Esquires. They're all impersonating attorneys. All these people may have taken an oath to be an attorney, and at one point they did the paperwork correct. But that's the name that they can practice under. They don't have any authorization to practice under a middle initial name. That is a fraud against the United States, and so they could be tried under the UCMJ, because guess what? Fraud against the United States is a military crime. And so is conspiracy. So we don't need to go to these fucking black robe priests. Take them to a commissioned officer. You are a general court martial convenient authority, sir. You just convenient do it on your own. And the great thing about a court martial, according to Rule 201 of the Manual of Court Martials, it says that a court martial has jurisdiction to determine if a court martial has jurisdiction. So we just need to give it a chance to decide if it has jurisdiction. But your Esquires won't tell you this, right? Mike Davis didn't tell you this. Pam Bondi. Did anybody tell you that the employees for AFSCME, American Federation of Government Employees, that they take an oath to their labor union? And then they pretend to take an oath to the under 5 USC 331. But when they do it, they use a middle initial name. And the paper's been bifurcated. It's a complicated thing, so I don't want to get into all the weeds on this stuff, but I'm just showing you. So who's going to be the one that looks at all this stuff? Because this happens in every court, from the traffic ticket court up to the Supreme Court. And there should be something that can be done about it. And I'm saying, yeah, you give a bunch of enlistees an order and you tell us, well, go to the courtroom and check every fucking paper that the attorney's putting in and make sure they use the proper ID. Make sure the judge's order has got proper ID on it. If they don't do it, well, then go file charges and specifications. Here's your order, right? And if you have that order and you go to JAG, they're going to let you file charges and specifications. You ain't got the order, you're not going to get to. Since I'm rolling on it, here's another one, sir, that we have two constitutions. Did you know that? Right? This one here says that executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States of America. This is the one that Congress uses. This is from House.gov, I believe it is. But this is the one that's in the manual for court martials. It says the executive power shall be vested in the President of the United States. Okay, well, that's the one I'm supposed to file the orders of. Who the hell's the President of the United States of America? This is the one that Congress uses. This is the one the military uses. And then the oath says, I do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Unfortunately, when you took it, sir, you put I, Donald John Trump, because Esquire Roberts told you to. So you changed the oath. You didn't do it the way the Constitution said. And then you said, so help me God at the end, which is a religious test, an unconstitutional religious test. All done by Esquire, sir. All standing around you trying to give you all this great advice. Anyways, I'm not sure. Did Mike Davis point that out to you? Because he was the one bringing up this thing about what it says in the DC Code. And it specifically says President of the United States. Well, that would be the one under the military then. So I know you know that because now the military's in there. But this is the one we were under for the rest of you, right? It was the one for the President of the United States of America that Congress had. And I think we just went to the other Constitution. At least I hope so. Thank God. Go to this one here. So give me just a minute to tick through a few other laws. See where we are, right? So here's the Oath of Enlistment, Title 10, United States Code 502. You could read the whole thing, but I don't need to. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States. That was for enlistees. Then it goes on, and orders of officers appointed over me. Well, I don't apparently have any of those. And according to regulations in the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Well, I can get those, right? So I can go read those myself and see what they say and say, we're supposed to do it by the regulation. Technically, that's what non-commissioned officers are supposed to do. Make sure we're doing shit by the book. I mean, everybody, likes to beg forgiveness, but at some point, you got to do it by the book. So, because of this, all enlistees have to follow. There's nobody else that has this. I will obey the orders of the President of the United States in their oath, sir, other than enlistees. Well, how does that make me somebody they say, because I have a DD-214 that said I got out in, I didn't actually say I got out in 1988, but that's what it would like you to believe. But this is what an AR 635-8 says. See, here's one of those Army regulations. It says that the DD Form 214 is not intended to have any legal effect on termination of a soldier's service. Well, I'm going to stand on that, so I'm still in. And the reason is because of 10 U.S.C. 506, which has to do with an enlistment in regular services in effect at the beginning of a war for into during a war, unless sooner terminated by the president, continues in effect until 6 months after the termination of the war. So when did the war start? Well, that's what the Legion Act tells us. The Legion Act, which its actual name was Let Everyone Get Involved in Opportunities for National Service, I think, or something like that, but says it can be called the Legion Act. And it says right here that since January 1st, 1947, the unrecognized war errors involving active United States military personnel who were wounded or killed serving their country were administered under the orders of the Commander-in-Chief. That'd be someone like you, sir. And with the consent of the Congress, proving that the United States has been conducting deadly wartime service to protect the country consistently since December 7, 1941. We've been at war since 1941. Eligibility for membership in the American Legion is determined by Congress through establishment of specific dates of declared and officially recognized hostilities in which United States military personnel are on active service. And so today, any enlistee who enlisted after December 7th, 1941, is eligible to be a member of the American Legion because they're saying the whole thing is one long war. Well, that means I enlisted during the war and I'm still enlisted. You've not given any. Only the president can terminate our enlistments until the war ends, 6 months after the war ends. And the war doesn't end until Congress says it's ended. Right? This is like right in the legal code where you got to have for martial law to end, you got to have an order, proclamation, or something in a treaty of peace. None of that's happened either. So, the Civil War martial law that Lincoln put us under is still actually ongoing. So there's my point, sir. This is how simple it is, right? This is enlistee simple. We could look at an order such as this and say, well, this is wrong, right? The guy used a middle initial name. It doesn't have a seal of the court, and it wasn't signed by the clerk. I don't really care what it says. It's wrong. That's far enough. I should be able to say, well, that is a fraud against the United States because this is supposed to be, or claims to be, a United States district court. And the law says that all district courts or all courts in the United States are going to do what I just said, and none of them are doing it. And they do the same thing at the state level. I guess that's one more thing I'd like to bring up. Because the problem started at the beginning, sir. These are the laws of the United States. This is Book 1, Statute 1, the very first law that President Washington signed, or first act that President Washington signed into law after ratification of the Constitution. So he must have thought it was a pretty big deal because they had all sorts of things they could have made the first one. But what did they make the first one? It's called an act to regulate the time and manner of administering certain oaths. And it says that the oath or affirmation required by a 6-hour Constitution of the United States shall be administered in the form following, to wit. And it tells you exactly how to do it. Well, that's not the oath that the people in the 6th article are taking. They're taking an oath that says, so help me God at the end. And when they take it, they're not using their full legal name. They're using the middle initial. So that's basically they hid their identity on their oath. Well, that's false swearing, and that's also a military crime. These are all things that we could take through the UCMJ because they're all happening in places that are flying a gold fringe flag. And a gold fringe flag, Army Regulation AR 840-10 says that a gold fringe flag, that the only courtroom it can fly in is a military courtroom. So when you go into a courtroom and see a gold fringe flag, that's a military courtroom. Well, that puts them under the UCMJ. Everybody there is under the UCMJ. The finial on the top of the flag pole or the flag staff is the presidential one. So they're all under the President of the United States. They just pretend that they have this power. Right? Even a district court judge, he doesn't take this oath. So he's not a judicial officer of the state under the Constitution. I don't care what oath he may have taken, but I know the oath that he did take says so help me God on the end of it, so it's unconstitutional. See, it cannot be a constitutional office. Well, the thing about the sixth article is it applies not just to officers of the United States, but also to officers of the several states. And so later on, when they got around to codifying all these statutes at large, they codified it in Title IV United States Code, Section 101, oath by members and legislatures and officers, that every member of the state legislature and every executive and judicial officer of a state shall, before he proceeds to execute duties of his office, take an oath in the following form, to wit. It's the same oath as in 1 Stat 23. Well, there is no state officers taking this oath. If they did, then the Secretary of State would have the oath. And I asked for Whitmer's. I said, please send me the oaths of Governor Whitmer, and they sent a counterfeit of the state oath, but they didn't send me this oath here. And if they didn't take this oath, they can't proceed to execute duties of their office. Yet they do it anyways. And then 102 says it has to be recorded. All these things are true, sir. So what we need to do is enforce the law. If you're not going to enforce the first law of the country, I'm afraid we're not going to get anything done. First of all, make everybody in their full legal name swear to support the Constitution of the United States. No, so help me God. Just like it says. So again, in this case, sir, they're going to kick this guy out. If you're looking for a conspiracy, well, here you are. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Esquires, 6 Esquires, one of them calls themselves a judge, involved in this thing, claiming that this is a order from a court of the United States. But if that was the case, it would have a seal and it would have the clerk's signature. And that's private simple. And so that's what I'm saying. Enlistees can be looking at orders like this, because you can get them all online. You could make it so we could go to the American Legion and have access to all court records to see if the court records have got the proper names on them. And real quick, all this simulated legal process will come to an end. The courts won't make any money anymore because they rely on this fictitious system where you can lie, cheat, and steal because you're really not going against anybody. It's all fiction. You know, they're practicing. They're not really doing the law. So enough on that. Okay, I said I was going to talk a little bit about capturing the underground Pentagon, so give me just a second. So as the story goes, soon after graduating from the Prime Power Production Specialist course, I'm getting my diploma from the Facility Engineer Support Agency. If you notice, that's got the castle in the middle. So as it turns out, that's for the Corps of Engineers. They have access to everywhere that the military has anything. And that's what I'm working for now, because I just completed this course. And next thing you know, well, I won't say next thing, but 3 months later, I guess it was 5 months later, I find myself driving up, or being driven up this road, going up a hill. All of a sudden, you're in the middle of nowhere. You got a guard station, and you go up further, and you got another guard station, and then finally you get to this place they call Raven Rock, which they don't really give you any pictures to look at. They don't show you anything on the inside, right? But so it's all you can see from the outside is, well, we got these tunnels that go in, and on the top of the mountain they have a radio station or antennas. That's a better shot because you know, this thing is supposed to be the alternative communication center or something like that. So anyways, we had spent a week in Woodbridge doing some special training on some equipment, and next thing I know, I'm being driven up here, and I'm being told by the sergeant I'd only known for 3 days so far. He said, you and Bob, you two, or you go with Bob, 2 Bobs, right? So I'm going with the other Bob. We had to go get a car and go up to this place here, and I had to wait outside where the other Bob went inside. He came out with a package. And the gate opened, and we went up here and climbed up on this tower right here and put some gear somewhere in a wire and came back down. It's like, why ain't that some shit? I've been through 6 gates to do that and, walked right through all of them. Well, that was that day. Well, the next day we go in, and me and Bob again and the sergeant, we go inside. We hadn't gone inside the day before. This is really all they show you about the inside of the underground Pentagon. We hadn't gone inside. So we walk in, and to me this looks like it's backwards. I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it doesn't. But it seemed to me we had a curve. Anyways, they're making it sound like this is where you're going to come in from this side here, and you go around this way, and then you come in here, and there's a blast doors you go in, and you come down here, there's bigger blast doors. Well, these doors are big enough. They're like 3 foot thick. And you go into the blast door, and it closes, and you look ahead, and there's another big blast door, 3 foot thick blast door, and it's closed. And in between is where you give them your ID, and they give you your inside the Pentagon ID. And then the inside door opens, and you go in. And what I remember being the first thing to see is a Fairbanks Morse opposed piston diesel generator. It's this huge thing. It comes from a Navy ship of some kind, but they had chosen it for that use because it could be 2/3 of the way knocked over and still work. So, this is supposed to be a nuclear protected site. Anyways, I make this turn, come down, and all of a sudden you start noticing that these buildings that go down these corridors here, they go from here back, that they're all sitting on springs. They're all three stories tall. And there's hallways that go in between them, so you got this is all rock, white stuff. Anyways, we walk down the 3rd door, and I've already been through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 checkpoints or something like that. And you get here, and there's another checkpoint. I had to wait for somebody to open the door to go up a stairwell to the 3rd floor. And just as we're getting out of the stairwell and we look down the hallway, I see this full-bird colonel coming out of his office, apparently, and his veins are sticking out of his neck, and he's got spit coming out of his mouth, and he's claiming that over his dead body is anybody going where we're going to go. And I said, well, this is all, before breakfast even. So the E7 I was with, he turned to me and Bob and said, you guys saw where the sign was for the mess hall, because they got a big cafeteria in this place. They can hold like 3,000 people in this place. But there's nobody there, right? The place almost empty all the time. So anyways, go down to the mess hall and get some breakfast. And 15 minutes later or so, the E7 comes back. And he got his breakfast. So we're going to go back in a little bit, and we should be all good. So we go back, and the colonel's no longer there to be seen. And we go through another door and finally get to our destination, which I didn't even know it was until then, but there was a hatchway that went to the roof. Big ass lock on. It's like, man, that's almost comically large lock on this thing, on the hatchway. And that's what the colonel was saying, that nobody's going to go up in the hatchway. I must know what he was saying. I didn't hear his words, but whatever it was going to be over his dead body, and I didn't see his body anymore, so I don't know what happened to him. All I know is we went up on the roof. So now I'm on the roof of the underground Pentagon. That's kind of freaky. And you're looking around, it's this big dome shape, shaped cavern that's cut out. And it has all this, looks like a big ass pin cushion, because it has all these core bolts that go in. I think they're like 20 foot long, like a big Hilti boat. And they all have tags on them. And somebody gets paid to go around there and torque those things. That's his job, is to take a torque wrench and torque all the bolts that hold up the ceiling. And that stuff is pinning up that looks like chain link fence, but it's really probably titanium or something, netting to hold all the rocks so it doesn't cave in. So anyways, I'm taking all that in, and I look to my left, and well, there's the wires that come down from the antenna that I was at just the other day. It's right, they're right up. I could have wrote it, if I had a post-it note, I could have wrote bang on it and stuck it on them. And, for some people, that's the same as a win. So that's why I say I capture the underground Pentagon, because I could have defeated this purpose for being at that time, which was an alternative communication center. But then I turn around, I hear this noise turn around, all of a sudden the hatchway gets dark, and keep looking, and this man just keeps coming out. He's like the biggest dude I ever seen in my life. Like, oh, how'd that dude ever get through that hatchway? He's the E7 MP. He walks over, and Bob and the other E7, the E7 are standing to my right somewhere. And he looks at them, but then he looks at me, and he's looking directly at me, and he says, "You need to know that they don't let people on the roof." So I'm looking at me, I'm like, "Bob, I don't know what that's all about, but okay. I got it. I got it there, Mr. MP." And he said, "Can I ask what you guys are doing?" And that was the great thing. See, now we're going to get to why we're there, because what we were going to do is we were going to test the facility for EMP, electromagnetic pulsing. And we were going to take the end of this C building and from the middle go all the way to the end, running wires 1 foot apart. It's like, this thing's 30, 40 feet across, like 40 wires going one way, and then 40, 60, some wires going across it the other way, from the first floor all the way over to the first floor on the other side, and then tie all these ends together and end up making a big antenna, basically. Been a Faraday cage, but we had one end that wasn't grounded, and running that into an oscilloscope with a special camera on it with 100,000 ASA film, so that when we took this special equipment back up on the surface, there's a whole other project that had to be done. They could pulse it with this thing that made a lightning bolt, and then they could look at the spark that came across the oscilloscope and tell by the shape what frequency it was and all sorts of things. It was, a lot of science involved in that part, but they were doing all this work so they could take that picture. And that's really all it was about. So, yeah, it wasn't no hero shit. It's just, how do you capture the underground Pentagon? With a signed order. And because we're in the facility engineers, all that shit's ours. We can go any place we want to. So what had happened is that the E7, that's when he told us, said, well, when we had gone to breakfast, that he had given the colonel a copy of our orders and said, well, there's a phone number on there if you have any questions. And apparently that's all it took to finally, the guy called the phone number or whatever, and what the Garrison Commander thought was going to be wasn't what happened. We were taking over his facility, and not just for a day. I mean, for the summer. So there you go, President Trump. I mean, you got an enlistee in order. You'd be surprised how the waters can part, and that's what I like to see happen. So back to the beginning, Commander Trump, I captured the underground Pentagon. Give me an order. Give enlistees an order. We're the only ones who took an oath to follow your orders. So we're waiting for some. And let the chips fall where they might after that. Well, very good. You all have a great day, and I'll be back again soon. See you now.